It was a dark and silent night, shrouded in a blanket of darkness that seemed to extend across the entire city. The stars were hidden behind the clouds, and the moon, when it appeared, cast only a faint light that barely illuminated the path in front of me. It was a typical autumn night, but an inexplicable restlessness had led me to walk through the city, and, finally, to stop in front of the old cemetery. The cemetery's iron gate creaked as I pushed it open, revealing the gloomy interior. A cold breeze whispered through the trees, and the dry leaves on the ground crunched beneath my feet. A feeling of uneasiness came over me, but I couldn't resist the urge to enter that scary place. The cemetery stretched out before me, with tombstones of varying sizes standing like silent sentinels. The grass was long and worn, indicating that the place had been neglected for many years. There was an atmosphere of abandonment and oblivion in the air, as if the souls buried there had been erased from the city's memory. I had no reason to be there. I was not visiting a loved one or paying any kind of tribute. In truth, he couldn't explain why he had been drawn to the cemetery that night. It was as if something inside me was urging me to continue, to explore the unknown. I walked slowly through the narrow corridors between the tombstones, reading the inscribed names and dates. The sighs of the wind mixed with the distant sounds of the city, creating a dark symphony that echoed in my ears. I felt like an intruder in a world of the dead, a lonely observer who dared to invade their tranquility. The cemetery was big, and I didn't have a destination in mind. I continued to walk, as if I were being guided by an invisible force. The shadows of the trees cast ominous figures on the ground, and the tombstones stood out like dark silhouettes against the night sky. The wind increased and seemed to carry with it indistinct murmurs, as if the souls resting there were trying to tell forgotten stories. At some point, a specific tombstone caught my eye. It was old and weathered, covered in moss and almost unreadable. Carefully, I wiped the surface with my hand, revealing the inscribed name Eleanor Caldwell, 1834, 1860. The date of her death suggested that she had died young, which piqued my curiosity. As I looked at Eleanor's tombstone, something strange caught my eye. There was a symbol carved into the stone, a circle with intertwined runes that I couldn't understand. It felt ancient and mysterious, and my curiosity turned into an insatiable need to know more. It was as if Eleanor's tombstone hid a secret I was destined to discover. As I stared at the strange symbol on Eleanor's tombstone, a strange feeling came over me. It was as if the cemetery itself was responding to my touch, as if the shadows had come to life, and the whispering winds were trying to tell me something. The atmosphere around me became thick, and the night seemed to take on a life of its own. My fingers touched the symbol engraved in the stone, and an electric current coursed through my body. It was a strange sensation, as if something inside me was being awakened. The melody of the wind changed, and I could hear distant murmurs, indistinct words that seemed to echo from all directions. It was then that I heard a soft, melancholic sigh. I turned quickly, looking for the source of the sound, but there was no one in sight. The night breeze shook the trees, and the dry leaves around me seemed to vibrate in response. However, the sigh persisted and now seemed to echo from the depths of the earth. I was drawn to Eleanor's tombstone as if I were being pulled by an invisible force. The mysterious symbol began to glow softly, casting a pale light over the tombstone and the surrounding ground. The cemetery was transforming, coming to life in response to my touch and the call from beyond. With fearful curiosity, I knelt down in front of the tombstone and began to dig in the dirt with my hands. The dirt was damp and cold, and each handful of dirt revealed more about Eleanor's story. The sighs turned to wails, as if she was begging to be freed from the darkness that had imprisoned her for so long. As he dug deeper, the intensity of the call from beyond grew. It was as if the cemetery was coming to life, and I was unearthing ancient, buried secrets. My hands were soaked with dirt, and Eleanor's tombstone began to glow more brightly, as if responding to my efforts. Finally, my fingers touched something cold and metallic. It was an object buried with Eleanor's coffin. Carefully, I unearthed the object and held it in the pale light of the moon. It was an old silver locket with a faded photo of a woman who appeared to be Eleanor. The symbol of the cemetery was engraved on the back of the medallion. Upon touching the medallion, a strange feeling ran through my body. It was as if the object had a direct connection to Eleanor and the cemetery itself. Eleanor's voice whispered in my mind, faint and sad, thanking me for answering her call. The atmosphere around me felt electrically charged. Eleanor's locket emitted a soft, pulsing light, like a heart beginning to beat after years of silence. It was as if the locket had the power to connect her to the world of the living. The moon, which had been hidden behind the clouds, emerged and cast a bright light over the cemetery. The earth around me began to shake, and the tombstones seemed to vibrate. The wind stopped whispering and instead howled with increasing intensity. I was stunned and scared, but I couldn't back down now. Eleanor's voice was clearer than ever, and her words seemed to echo in my mind. She was calling on me to help her, to free her from the prison that had held her captive for so long. What would happen next? I had no way of knowing, but one thing was certain: the cemetery had awakened, and I was about to embark on a journey that would take me beyond the confines of the living world into the unknown. The silver medallion, now in my hands, pulsed with a mysterious light. It was as if there was a direct connection between Eleanor and me, a connection that transcended the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead. The night had taken on an otherworldly feel, as if it were being invaded by inexplicable forces. Eleanor's voice echoed in my mind, a sad, stray melody. She told me her story, how she had died young, victim of a mysterious illness, and how her spirit had been trapped by an inexplicable force linked to the symbol on her tombstone. She had wandered alone and in anguish, unable to find peace, until I, for some reason, had found her. Eleanor begged me to help her break the chains that kept her imprisoned. She wanted to find the peace that had been denied her for so long and discover what had happened to her spirit after death. She had been forgotten by the world, and now it was my responsibility to help her find redemption. There was no way to refuse Eleanor's request. The bond between us was undeniable, and I felt the need to help her find peace. With the silver medallion in hand, I promised to do whatever it took to free her from the chains that imprisoned her. The moon, now bright in the night sky, seemed to cast its light upon us like a silent blessing. It was as if the universe itself was witnessing our commitment. The wind stopped howling, and the cemetery was silent. Eleanor smiled at me with gratitude and sadness, her translucent image trembling slightly. I decided that the only way to fulfill my promise to Eleanor was to discover the secret behind the symbol on the tombstone. I had to understand what had caused her imprisonment and what was needed to free her. With determination, I began to investigate the symbol, examining it thoroughly. It was a circle with intertwined runes, and it looked ancient and mysterious. It was as if those runes held the keys to Eleanor's freedom. My search led me to a crucial point. I needed to understand the meaning and purpose of the symbol so I could break the curse that imprisoned Eleanor. I knew I was embarking on a scary journey, but I couldn't back down now. With the help of old books and a friend who was knowledgeable in arcane symbols, I began to decipher the runes. They seemed to belong to an ancient ritual, a protective and sealing ceremony that was used to trap evil spirits. However, there was something more to that symbol, something that made it unique and intricate. I continued my research, delving deeper into the world of rituals and spells. The answers seemed to be getting closer, but the mystery remained. There was something about that symbol that didn't fit into common rituals. It was as if a dark force had changed him in some way. Every time I got closer to the truth, the shadows seemed to move around me, as if they were trying to stop me from discovering the secret. It was as if the darkness itself was conspiring to keep Eleanor imprisoned. As I delved deeper into the mystery of the symbol, the nights became longer and scarier. I knew the answer was within reach, but the price of discovery was high. The cemetery had become a place of dark secrets and a battle between light and darkness. I was willing to pay any price to free Eleanor and fulfill my promise of redemption. Nights turned into weeks, and my quest to decipher the mysterious symbol continued. Each time I got closer to the truth, the shadows seemed to become more menacing, as if they were determined to keep the secret hidden. The once peaceful cemetery was now immersed in an ominous atmosphere. My friend, the connoisseur of arcane symbols, expressed his concern. He warned me about the dangers of disturbing the secrets of the beyond, warning that the force that held Eleanor prisoner was ancient and powerful. However, my determination did not waver. Eleanor had told her story. and I promised to help her find peace. One night, when I was in the cemetery researching the symbol, something extraordinary happened. The clouds parted, revealing the full moon, which shed its light on Eleanor's tombstone. The symbol on the stone began to glow brightly, as if it was responding to my unremitting effort. I knew this was the moment. It was the opportunity he needed to finally solve the mystery of the symbol and free Eleanor. With the silver medallion in my hands, I focused on the circle of intertwined runes, reciting words of power that I had discovered during my research. The cemetery shook, and the shadows stirred. The wind howled, but no longer as a force impeding my progress. Now he was like an ally. The full moon seemed to smile upon us, illuminating the place with pure light. The symbol on Eleanor's tombstone began to crumble, the runes uncoiling like serpents before disappearing completely. The feeling of triumph mixed with fear as I had no idea what would happen next. It was then that a portal opened before me, a passage to a world that was both frightening and beautiful. It was as if the barriers between the worlds of the living and the dead melted. Eleanor emerged from the portal, and her eyes, once filled with sadness and longing, now shone with gratitude. She was free, and the feeling of accomplishment and peace enveloped the entire cemetery. The shadows dissipated, and the gloomy atmosphere that had hung over the place disappeared. We looked at each other for a moment, aware that our journey had come to an end. Eleanor smiled, a smile full of gratitude, and then it began to fade. The moonlight seemed to envelop her, and she became part of the spiritual world, where she would finally find the peace she sought. I stood there with the silver locket in my hands, looking at the place where Eleanor had disappeared. The cemetery was silent, and a sense of accomplishment washed over me. I had fulfilled my promise, helped free a tormented soul, and unlocked the mystery that had kept her trapped for so long. However, the experience left its mark. I knew I would never look at cemeteries the same way again. The world was full of dark secrets and hidden mysteries, and I had learned that sometimes it's best not to upset the balance between the worlds. The consequences can be scarier than any nightmare. I set off from the cemetery, carrying Eleanor's locket as a reminder of our journey. The night was peaceful, and the moon shone above me. I had crossed the boundaries between worlds, faced the unknown, and finally helped a soul find peace. The night at the Wailing Cemetery had changed my life forever, leaving me with a deeper understanding of the world and its many wonders and horrors. And in the end, the price of mystery had been worth it, even if my nights were now filled with a new kind of darkness.